So I'm going to make a hand-tied bunch, and whenever I do, I always pick 6 ingredients. I pick 3 foliage and I pick 3 flowers. The first foliage plant is the most important of all. It's what I call the primary, and what you want is a narrow stem and a big generous top. And this plant, which is Euphorbia Oblongata, is the best primary foliage plant ever, because it just has exactly that characteristic. So what you can do is very easily, by just putting a few stems together in one hand, you create what I call a sieve. And what I mean by that is a sort of round circle in the air into which you can drop everything else, and it's held in place. Because what I find is that with the traditional technique of making a hand-tied bunch, which has that neat spiral effect with the stems, I think that was designed by men for men, really, and not women that have small hands. Because you just simply can't keep a hold of them all, and yet these stems are all very neat, but they're not interlocking. And with this system, where you create your sieve, you'll see it just, everything gets sort of tied into each other, so you don't have to hold every stem. So there I've got my sieve in the air with my euphorbia. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use Cerinthe major Purpurascens, and I'm going to drop it in to the sieve. And that's what I mean about the sieve, is literally, so into the holes it goes. And Cerinthe and the euphorbia I've conditioned by searing the stem ends in boiling water for 20 seconds. And it then holds its heads up quite well, but it looks pretty, the purple and the silvery grey colour with the euphorbia acid green. So I just thread that through the sieve, dead easy, just relatively even. And so thread it through and then turn. Thread it through and turn. Okay, so secondary foliage in place then. And now I'm going to use Viburnum opulus sterile, the pom-pom bush, Gelder rose it's sometimes called, as my tertiary foliage, and so my third foliage plant. And some of these I'm going to add, leaving them standing quite proud. And that's what I think is really nice for a relaxed sort of country-style bunch. A lot of sort of more florist-bought bunches I think are too neat, too plateau-like, and they become a bit two-dimensional, a bit dull after a while. I think you want it a bit shabby, a bit messy, and then it looks more natural and more garden-like. And the upper story, just poking right out the top, is a really important part of that. So I'm just threading it again through the sieve, some down quite low in the heart of the arrangement to create more of a heart, and some quite high to create a horizon. And that's the other thing, is it's really important for a natural bunch to have both the heart and the horizon. So nearly there with the foliage. All these have had their stem ends seared in boiling water. The Cerinthe and the euphorbia just for 20 seconds, and the woody stem of the viburnum 30 or 40 seconds, because it needs to increase the surface area for water absorption. Okay, so foliage in place, and I reckon you want to be able to plonk that in a vase and put it on the kitchen table and feel happy with it, for the foliage to be good, and before you can move on to your flowers. Because then the flowers are just like the icing on the cake, and of course if you're buying flowers they tend to be the most expensive thing. So what I'm using here is a lovely tulip which I adore called Menton, M-E-N-T-O-N, and just dropping that again in through the sieve, some right down in the heart like that, and some poking up a bit proud for more like the horizon, like that one. And I'm not worrying about the numbers really, I'm just scattering them through relatively evenly, but not fussing about that too much. And even one like that I want to go right into the middle of the bunch, I can put it through where I want it, and it comes out the side like that. And then so it's not into my hand at all at that point, but then I can pull it through and ease it into the place in the bunch that I want it. Now, so that was my bride, and then I always pick my second flower is an almost identical colour, but perhaps not quite so showy. And so I tend to call the first flower, which is the one that you walk into the garden or walk into the flower shop and you think, wow, that looks amazing, I want that. I tend to call that the bride. And then I add the same colour, but not quite as showy, and I call that my bridesmaid. And so for the Menton tulip, I've used this lovely tulip called Florosa. And Florosa is part of a new generation of tulips which are crossing the Viridiflora group, the green flowered group, with the lily flowered group. And you can see that. So it's got the elegance of the lily flowered, but the longevity in the vase and in the garden of the Viridiflora. And so it's a really splendid tulip to grow and really fantastic garden plant. And very, very durable, so it'll come up reliably year after year. So in goes my bridesmaid. So at no point am I just adding, whoop! Oh dear, I broke that one. But anyway, at no point am I adding just around the outside, because then if I wasn't holding it, it would be collapsing onto the ground. So all of them I'm threading through. Now finally, I'm going to add an allium, and this one's called Purple Rain. And I'm threading it through just in the same way. But what I've chosen this on purpose for being a colour contrast to the other flowers. And that's what I call my gatecrasher. So it's slightly picking up on the colour of the Cerinthe, but it's contrasting quite strongly to the colours of the tulips. And so it's a bit of a naughty gatecrasher. And I think of that like putting a squeeze of lemon on your smoked salmon. It's kind of that zap that actually brings the whole thing to life. So I'm just threading that one through. Okay, so that's done. Now then there's a brilliant knot. It's a really good one to know. And you always have a double length of string like that. And then you put it round the stem, and the two cut ends go through the loop like that. And then it means that without everything collapsing onto the ground, one then goes one way, one goes the other way. You can lay it down on the table and then just tighten it. So you can just tie it off. And then what I want to do is to cut my stem ends to be the same length. And now I'm going to wrap it. And so to wrap it, I've got 3 sheets of tissue paper, and this is rather amazing, this stuff. It's waterproof. It's almost like a sort of glassine texture to it. And so I'm just going to pop the flowers into the middle of it like that, and just curve it round. And then I'm going to get some cellophane. And the great thing about cellophane is it's very easy to tear if you know the right way. And the right way is to do it over the edge of the table. I get about a metre like that. Start it off with my teeth. And then you have to do it under tension quite violently, and then it tears straight. If you're tentative about it, it splinters all over the place. So if you go like that, you get a straight edge. And then I'm just going to pop the bunch bang into the middle. So I then put the 2 cut ends through the loop again, and before I tighten it off completely, just put it under a tap or get a jug of water and pour it right into the centre of the arrangement. And effectively, just try and make sure your stems are covered, so that they're sitting in water. And it's a bit more elegant when there's a blue roll at the bottom of a plastic bag. And now you can finally tighten it off. And then, because you've cut your stem ends to the same length and you've got the weight of the water, You should then be able to stand it up like that. There we are. Ta-da!